It's the Forever Knight-athon. We're recapping and reviewing every single episode of Season 1 of the 1990s Canadian police procedural about a vampire detective taking a bite out of crime. Episode 3 begins with a bang, which is to say that two people are banging in a furniture store. She is a sex worker, I think, it's unclear. He is a security guard. She kisses him goodnight and goes back to her car where she puts back on her cross and wedding ring. That's right, she was married. How scandalous! Before a masked figure emerges from her back seat to choke her. Her screams are drowned out by all of the TVs showing Night of the Demon. Later, Nick walks into a nightclub operated by fellow vampire and dubious ally, Jeanette.
Word to the wise. Immortality is no excuse not to floss.
No, it's not, I suppose, but not eating is a pretty good reason not to floss. I don't know. I guess blood could get between your teeth or something. Feels like you could rinse that out. Dentists, weigh in. When vampires come to your practice, do you encourage them to floss? I'm specifically speaking to night dentists. Day dentists obviously don't have vampires coming in. Nick's like, hey, Jeanette, do you know anything about these murders of women going on? Because, like, that shit's fucked. And she's like, I don't know, suck my fingies.
2 women have been murdered this week. 1 decapitated, 1 disemboweled.
You know I don't care about what happens to them.
Skanky wanders in and is approached by this woman, and get ready for the first of many wig reveals. Forever Knight is, if nothing else, a study in wig sciences. This is what wigs were like in the 90s. There will be many, many more. Nick shoos him outside and is like, hey, Skanky, you're married. And Skanky's like, yeah, I know, man. I was trying to have an affair with that hot lady. Nick taunts him, saying he doesn't have the grapes to actually do it. Like men do, you know? Like, you don't have the balls to cheat on your wife. You're too weak to cheat on your wife, pussy. These are things men say to each other. Then they're called to the scene of a murder most foul.
What the hell is this?
It's a crucifixion.
Okay, wow, holy shit, Jesus Christ, that is, wow, okay. They bring in the guard for questioning, but Nick doesn't think he did the killing for no real reason in particular. He can just tell. He can just look at that guy and go, he doesn't look like he did the killing. That would be too easy. It wouldn't be a good episode if it was him. Natalie confirms that the woman died before being nailed to the ground. She died of fear.
She died from sheer and mitigated terror.
Also, we saw her get strangled. Also, there's no hole in her hand now. She shows Nick the woman's cool cross necklace, and he's like, yo, what the hell? I'm a vampire. Don't show me that. And she's like, get over your vampire fears. I do feel like Nick has a right to be afraid of crosses, seeing as though they do seem to set him on fire. Get this, all 3 of these women wore crosses, and they were all Catholic, in which case they probably should have been wearing crucifixes, not crosses, but nevertheless. The killer goes into a confessional booth and brags to a priest about his murders most foul. The priest is wicked, not impressed, but the killer runs away before he can see his face. At his apartment, Nick is trying to overcome his vampiric fears, so he tries eating garlic. It does not go well. He then stares meaningfully at a cross, which I guess they just let him take home from the evidence locker, which brings us to this week's flashback. In 15th century France, Nick stalks a woman who he intends to prey on. She stares him down, though, completely unintimidated. She knows who he is, having heard legends of the crusader turned vampire from her mom. She pities him because immortals fear death, but she doesn't, because of her faith, you see.
What is your other name?
Joan.
Yep, that's right. It's Joan of Arc. That's Joan of Arc. Pretty cool story. Nick attempts to reach out and touch a cross, but it causes him to burst into flames, and I think that's, pretty reasonable thing to be afraid of. Back in 1992, the hand he's holding the cross with gets burned, so it's still pretty obviously dangerous. The young priest is speaking with an older priest, asking if it's okay to go to police with information obtained during confession, and the older priest is like, as we both know, as priests, no, that's something you can't do. It's a big priest thing, dude. And the young priest is like, wouldn't that be like, hypothetically pretty hard on your conscience? And the older priest is like, yeah, dude, that would fucking suck. Glad I don't have to go through something like that. That would be real tough. Good talk. See you later.
If we break the seal of the confession, who could ever trust the church again?
Yep. Mm-hmm. That would be the thing to shatter people's faith in the Catholic Church, because up until now, they've had nothing but good publicity. On his night off, Skanky heads back to Jeanette's club to prove to himself that he has the courage, nay, the strength, to cheat on his wife. I guess it makes sense that the woman with a giant beehive hairdo would be attracted to the dude that looks like Homer Simpson, but actually, she's just the vampire who wants to gorble him. Nick waits outside the church to talk to the priest, and asks if he knew the 3 women who were murdered. All 3 were parishioners at his church. The priest is less than cooperative, not wanting to violate the dumb rules that God makes him follow. Beehive takes Skanky to another room and almost bites him before Jeanette interrupts her. Skanky wakes up as though he's been in a trance, confused and disoriented. Jeanette is like, "Get out of here."
Where am I?
Just get out of here.
I guess she cared about saving mortal lives more than she let on. Or, maybe she thought like a dead cop in her club would attract a lot of problems. Who knows? Later, in the offices of a phone sex company. So like back in the day, you had these hotlines you could call, you give them your credit card info, and somebody on the other end would talk to you, but pornographically. I don't know if that's still a thing. I don't know anybody that's ever actually called one, because I feel like it seems really expensive. But at the time, these things were all over the place. They were everywhere. Working there is Magda, who gets an alarming call.
You profane the church by feeding the fire of lust. I know who you are, Magda.
Which she records and takes the tape. She walks down a long hallway and gets ambushed by the killer, but what? How did he sneak up on her? That is a long, straight hallway. Where did he come from? He starts dragging her around before Nick shows up, alerted to the crime in progress thanks to his keen vampire senses. He drops in through a conveniently placed rooftop emergency exit, but he's shot in the gut by the killer, who flees the scene. He yells at the woman to call an ambulance, and then, when she's out of view, he pursues the killer. This show looks so fucking good, man. He catches up with him and unmasks him only to reveal it's the priest? What?
Okay, you were in the alley because you wanted to warn Magda, weren't you?
They bring him in to interrogate him, and Nick has zero patience for this whole inviolability of confession thing. But Stuntree chews him out. He's headed up to here with Nick's attitude. "You're a loose cannon, Knight." Father Rochefort is like, I believe in this. Do you believe in anything, detective? We cut back to Nick and Joan of Arc a few years later. Now she's got a boy haircut like from history, and she mentions that she's afraid she's going to be executed as a heretic. And Nick is like, okay, well, I could turn you into a vampire and you'd be fine, which is not true, because actually vampires are weak to fire, so it wouldn't help at all. I don't know why that's your solution. She refuses, saying she has faith in God, and her certainty clearly disturbs Nick, because if there's a God, he's fucked. She gives him a cross to remember her by, which he keeps to this day. He shows it to Natalie while wearing a very silly shirt. They try to build up his resistance to the cross because he needs to stake out the church. What? Is he in the middle of the day? Is this meant to be day for night? What? This is just the daytime. If you're going to do day for night, you got to tint it blue, dog. The show has such a strong use of color. How did they mess up this so bad? I mean, I know that they didn't have the same digital color correction tools we have now, but just look at this. Tint that shit blue. We see blues best in darkness, so shit is blue at night. Try it out. Turn up the lights. Everything will be blue. Skanky is calling his wife to tell her he loves her because he felt bad about intentionally going out of his way to cheat on her, only to be interrupted at the last second, which I think is worse than actually going through with it. Because, imagine knowing that your partner tried to cheat on you and couldn't even seal the deal. That's fucking pathetic. Now, not only are they unfaithful, they're also a loser. Nick goes inside the church and is looking at the candles, and that makes him flash back to seeing Joan of Arc get burned at the stake, which I guess disturbed him a lot because they had spoken 3 times previously. Must have meant a lot to her, too, because her last words are directed to him.
Do not mourn for me, Nicholas. I will live forever.
He is not having a good time in this church, which, who does? Were there no other cops in the city who could have done this? He hides in the confessional booth because it's the only dark place in the church, which you might have anticipated, dude. The churches they're famously full of light. They have big windows specifically to catch light. There's a scene where Skanky decides he wants to confess his attempted affair, only to realize he's not talking to a priest, he's talking to Nick.
20 Hail Marys. Promise you'll never go in there again.
And Father Rochefort does not like that. He tells him off while Nick struggles to stand because of all of the God. Nick escapes from police custody to go to church. Hey Magda, go to a different church than the one where the serial killer is looking to murder you. She's abducted by the world's most serial killer-coded man, who attempts to burn her on a cross, which seems like a pretty blasphemous thing to do for a guy whose whole thing is Jesus. Nick saves her, though. Nick saves her is the point.
How did you do that?
A little bit of adrenaline. And a lot of faith.
A leap of faith, Nick. It's right there. A leap of faith. Come on. Anyway, they catch the guy, I guess. He's some nobody. Don't worry about it. Magda gives Nick a cross as a thank you, which only burns him a little bit, so I guess he's making progress. Overall, not a big fan of the trope of the world-weary guy who lost his faith having to accept some nominally Christian spirituality in order to get over an emotional problem. Still, this was yet another banger episode with some great character work. The concept of Nick being personal friends with Joan of Arc was a little bit underbaked, but it came together eventually. Also, the message, I guess, is about the power of faith, but like a better message would have been about not hating women, because both the A plot and B plot were about women being murdered because of people's faiths. So like that probably should have been the focus here, how people treat women like they're more sinful than men. I love the subplot with Skanky's adulterous little adventure, but unfortunately, this episode did not feature LaCroix, and I am forced to award it no points. Am I doing a point system? Sure. I'm doing a point system.
And I want to thank the people who will forever be my knights over at patreon.com/scarycats. We've got, in particular, there's Verbena, Cooper Holmes, Joe McClory, Liz Widow, Maston Ginger, James Garford, C.H. Phillips, Gideon Charlotte Hollingsworth, Devin Kaler, Spooky Heather Sylvia, and definitely Todd.
And I, Bobby Duke, the star of the channel, would like to thank these other people who's also the stars of the channel on account of their support on Patreon. You got Jay Tony, Schadenfraulein, Lanston Tyne, Rachel Rat, Gato Moore, Carpad, Josh Manes, Hyla Tracy, Louisa Prito, who Mildo didn't even tell me to mention last week, thanks for that one, and Jesse. Use always the stars of the channel. Why don't you go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe? We're gonna do 22 of these fucking things. Why does it sound weird when I swear? I don't know. It just does. That don't sound right.